Hi, welcome to the stream. This is the pre-show where we get a chance to talk about things that are in the news. We're going to be going live on television in just a few. Also, you got to stay for our post-show where we get a little bit deeper into the issues that we discussed of the day. One of the things that I wanted to bring up from the outset today is this case that's in Joplin, Missouri. There was a massive, basically tornado 2 nights ago, Sunday night. And it has been really devastating. Over 100 people have been killed. A lot of people have been injured. It's one of the worst storms in the United States in decades. And a lot of people have been talking about, what's happened. We saw some interesting reports today that people have been using social media platforms in order to try to find one another. Right. So I know that we've got a Storify up there. Ahmed, can you talk a little bit about what folks have been doing?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this in Japan, disaster relief situations. The use of Twitter and Facebook and online platforms becomes really crucial. And, right here, it just explains it. The disaster took out a lot of the phone lines and the transportation was disrupted. So people relied on these tools. I mean, we have photos right here that had been uploaded right away. People turned to Facebook and YouTube to start uploading videos. Let's just play some of this stuff. This is a first-person video of the actual tornado. I mean, now of course you can't see a lot of what's happening, but we can investigate it later. But you see these tweets. It's saying within hours of the storm that killed more than 116 people, there were 4 Facebook groups that each had 3,000 likes. And that each had information about the survivors and their whereabouts.
And there was everything from, children looking for their mothers to people talking about their dads who used to, go to a McDonald's certain Sundays and you might know him from there. But it's incredible that this is the only place that they can really go to mobilize and organize.
I saw a one Facebook post from a woman who is not there, who was looking for her niece who lives there. I mean, it's really sad. One of the things that I think about with this, though, is obviously, we've seen amazing weather-related events around the world.
Right.
The earthquakes, I would say, is something slightly separate, like, what's happening with them. But with some of these large storms, tornadoes, windstorms, hurricanes, etc., part of the thing that's interesting to me is that we don't hear a greater discussion about climate change and its potential impact. Because from what we've heard, global warming is not necessarily just about warming. I mean, the fact that the overall temperatures of the earth and of the water are getting higher.
Just irregular.
It can cause a lot of changes. Certain places like Scandinavia, because of interruptions to the jet stream, they might become a lot colder.
Yeah.
But you also have the idea that storms could become a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Is it possible that some of this stuff is influenced by climate change, potentially?
I think the thing about that, though, is while you're dealing with an immediate crisis, and it's almost, you don't want to devalue that immediate crisis by bringing in a global conversation that is somewhat controversial. So I think as we are as individuals, everyone looks at that individual situation, and if that individual time they're dealing with a crisis, it's harder to look at the global scale of things and whether it's climate.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, well, I mean, because you think about, you have this Joplin situation. Last week, the last few weeks, they've been talking about major flooding along the Mississippi River, which affected Missouri as well, which is where Joplin's located, Louisiana, Mississippi, a number of other states. Then you have, like maybe a month ago, you had these massive storms that were affecting parts of the South.
Right.
And so at a certain point, you're right, it's like we want to think about the issue at hand and like what's happened to Joplin is real tragedy.
Right.
But at what point do we start considering like, well, what's the bigger scope and what's happening in other countries that may not get as much coverage?
Right.
Where, they're seeing all kinds of basically environmental crises that we might not be reporting, and therefore we might not be considering if there are or are not patterns.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, you mentioned the global warming side of things and the bigger kind of, the larger lesson to be learned or to be investigated, but a lot of people get really focused in on the practical matters. Like, we've seen, for example, if you go back, part of our story is we're saying that, there's these decentralized initiatives, but what happens is there's family reunification pages that appear on Facebook, after natural disasters, but even during, they're saying after the 2007 shooting at Virginia Tech, which I'm sure you all remember was another national disaster in the States. There was a Facebook group called I'm Okay at VT because a lot of people didn't know how to contact
people. How do you let people know?
Yeah, how do you let
The good thing, though, about the social component of things is it's almost like an online diary of all these things. And where before in history, major media outlets would report on things and then they would disappear, we now basically have a history of things online, and it's a better way to tap into everything and connect all the pieces, which can speak to global warming.
Yeah, we've got an online archive of everything.
Absolutely.
I want to flip the script a little bit before we're out of time in the pre-show, just to talk about something that I saw that was happier news. It was much better news, and that is this company Square, that was started by Jack Dorsey, who's one of the co-founders of Twitter. Basically came out with a new product yesterday, and we were talking about
a new variation
the card case, right?
Exactly. So basically, Square deals with mobile payments. We were talking yesterday about platforms in Africa. And one of the things that we were discussing is the idea of mobile payments. Well, Square is basically making it easy for any vendor to,
become a shop.
Yeah, become a shop, exactly.
Yeah, so, and it's amazing. They're up to, I think, $3 million of transactions a day, and they're aiming for reaching $1 billion goal by the end of the year.
Yeah, which is incredible. And the funny thing is, I was reading a little bit about how Square works, and it's like, it's a combination of technology that enables the transaction, but also that enables a deeper relationship between the merchant and the consumer. So you go and you buy at one of these places, and you basically, you download the app from this store, and it lets you know when there are opportunities, when there are different things going on. You can click a button to put something on your tab. You can walk into the store, the purchase is already made.
It's perfect for me because I keep losing my wallet, so I'm excited about this, but God
knows.
But you
don't lose your cell phone.
Well, no, I'll probably lose my cell phone. It's a little more expensive. So.
I mean, it's bypassing a lot of giants, and it's bringing up a big conversation about if a technology can be created that surpasses everything that we know, like Visa and PayPal, what direction are we going in? Which is really exciting.
Well, one thing to sort of tie them together a little bit is, with the Haiti earthquake last year, we saw record online donations. People by mobile, like a lot of SMS donations. I'm wondering if, as you get into platforms like Square and other things, if there may be ways of having more accountability so that you not only can you give money, but you can find out what happens
where
to that
it goes.
money.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Well, how much did they say? It was like the projections are $1 billion.
$1 billion by the end of the year. Yeah.
$1 billion by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to wrap it up. We're going to be going live in just a few. I think today is going to be really interesting because we're doing a story that our viewers have been tweeting about all week. They've been asking us to cover this. So we're going to go in deep on this one. We're going to go live now in just a little bit, so we ask for you to stay with us. And remember, you can always tweet us the stories you want us to cover at AJ Stream. We're going to see you on air in just a few. Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in The Stream, a social media community with its own daily TV show. We are, as always, bringing you the stories that are ongoing, global, and sourced from social media. Today, why tens of thousands of protesters have swarmed the streets of Spain, and their connection to the uprisings across the Middle East and North Africa. As always, our digital producer Ahmed Shihab Eldin is joining us. And again, for the second day on the couch is Azita Ardakani. She's the founder of Love Social, an organization that uses social media campaigns or does social media campaigns for various causes. Azita, talk to us about the project you did for Gasland.
Yeah, so Gasland came across our radar before it was the amazing documentary that it is now. So it actually came across our radar before Sundance and before the Academy Awards. And what was really important was that the message was something that affected people in rural areas. So like we've talked about before, social media is a great way to connect these people. Gasland focuses on hydraulic fracturing. A lot of these people were being affected. And we created a huge social media community that allowed people to upload photos of their dirty water, organize protests against fracking in the area, and really mobilized in an amazing way. And it's actually gained a lot of momentum and, again, made it to the Oscars.
That's amazing.
As a
and
finalist
hydraulic
this year.
fracturing, by that, it's basically a way that companies pump chemicals into the ground to break up the earth to get natural gas out of it. So it's an energy issue, but it's poisoning the water in a lot of local communities. It was great that you guys took that film from unknown to the Academy Awards, so congratulations on that. Ahmed, I want to get a little more insight into what kind of stuff people are talking about online, because today's story is really all about our online community.
Right, so we're talking about Spain later today, but people are using and hijacking, you could say, the Spain hashtags like Spanish Revolution to get our attention, asking us to pay attention to Morocco. Hisham G right here is saying, what do you make of Moroccans who have been out in the streets protesting like their Arab brothers, like the Spaniards now, for 13 weeks now? So the story is developing, and we've been following this story. What's essentially happened is on Sunday, across Morocco, in Casablanca and Rabat, we've seen protesters being detained and beaten, and essentially the government seems to be cracking down a little stronger than they had been previously. Now, Al Badiko is sending us a link to this really great resource called Mam Fakinch, and what it does is it really shows you all the different places in Morocco where this story is really a story. And they have videos, as you can see. These are videos. These are reports of incidents of protesters being detained. We're just going to show you some of these actual pictures to give you a sense of what's been happening recently as the crackdown gets wider. But perhaps, Azira, you can talk about what you think is happening. You know, we haven't heard much from Morocco, and now we are, and people think that, you know, by cracking down, they're actually perpetuating the protests. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, any time that you, I think, you know, go at something with angry or try to push it down, it's going to push back that much harder. And this is what we're seeing over and over again. The more that they try to oppose these people from speaking their mind and speaking against things. I think it was a quote I actually tweeted earlier today, and it was basically something along the lines that those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And that was from John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, we also, in another part of Africa, we see people are geared up to call out on May 28th using that hashtag in Eritrea to be protesting against what they're asking for here on this Facebook page. You say 3,000 people have already, forgive me, that's our Facebook page. They have on their Facebook page protests that they're calling out for, but basically they have three main concerns and lots of photos right here, as you can see.
So we should definitely keep an eye on what's happening there as well. It seems like there's a protest fever that's out in the air, and we're definitely going to be talking about that today.
Yeah, and Facebook stats are going up in Eritrea, so more people are engaged. And remember, we really rely on you to share these stories with us. So if you have any information about Morocco or any other story, you can tweet us at AJStream.
Hi, I'm Lucia Newman. I'm Al Jazeera's senior Latin American correspondent, and I'm in the stream.
Across Spain, protesters have taken over dozens of city squares, demanding economic, political, and social reforms in a movement known as the Outraged. In less than 2 weeks, they've managed to galvanize an entire nation in a way that hasn't been seen in decades. This is a story we've received a ton of feedback about on Twitter. We always tell people we cover the stories that you bring to us, and I think this is a perfect example. We've been seeing tweets from a lot of people. @Gavilan has been really consistent in sending us some amazing information on Twitter. And if you look at my screen, what you can see is an image of people protesting in a square. I believe this one is actually in Madrid. And what's happened is you've had folks taking up positions in cities across Spain protesting the difficult times that young people in particular are having. Spain, as we've mentioned before in the program, has the highest unemployment rate in the Eurozone. Right now, it's about, I think, 20%.
45%.
20% for overall, but it's 45% for youth,
under
people under
25.
25.
Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is amazing. And Glynis McNichol, one of our guests, was here last week and said, you know, she would go to like local stores and bodegas in a cafe in Spain, and she would see older people working there,
Right.
which the kind of jobs that usually would go to teenagers and young people, which lets you know why there's a 45% unemployment rate there.
Right.
And so you have all these images of people protesting around the country. I think Ahmed has got another compelling one on his screen, which is really interesting because they took a panoramic view of this. So if we take a look at that, you can just see the camera pan across all of these thousands and thousands of people that are gathered.
This is what they're calling the guerrilla garden, where all the unemployed people are, mobilizing and camping.
And, I have another one that we were also tweeted, and this is an image on my screen of a young woman. She's standing up there. They're changing the name of the place. They're calling it Plaza de 15 de Mayo, which is basically the plaza of the 15th of May, which is when they started these protests.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing now is Spain is running into two challenges. One, these massive protests amongst young people, but two, the ruling party got squashed. I mean, they suffered significant losses in local and municipal elections just this past Sunday. So to give us an idea of what's happening right now on the ground in Madrid, joining us via Skype is Pablo Prieto. He's the spokesperson for the organization Toma la Plaza, or Take the Square, which is one of the groups that's heading these protests. Pablo, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stream.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Pablo, why are you guys taking over these squares?
Well, this is a spontaneous protest made by just individual people. We're not representing any type of institution or organization. We're just fed up with the situation where we don't have the power anymore. The power has been given off to financial institutions, to international banking institutions, and we want the power back. I think the power in democracy should belong to people, and that's what we're fighting for.
Now, Pablo, this is a very interesting question because we have been, as we were researching the story, we saw that there are some that are because as you mentioned, it's a distributed movement. It's not a particular organization that is pulling this all together, but that there are some that are part of this movement who've been calling for people to not vote. So if there are these calls for people to not participate in the political process, how can you hope to actually make political gains?
Well, we believe that politicians don't represent us anymore. So we're not calling anyone to not vote. Those are just individual voices. Some people are calling to vote to the left, to the right. But here in this movement, there's all kinds of different political tendencies represented. So it's not we're not calling against voting. We just we're not just protesting against something. We're proposing alternatives. So the alternative is direct democracy, where everybody has the right to participate and everybody has the same power as any other person.
Doesn't Spain already have democracy? What do you want to see different?
Well, as we believe, it is not democracy because politicians don't represent the people. They work for powers. Last Sunday we saw the president of the government in a car with the president of the largest telephonic company, and they're just allied. And we've lost that power.
Yeah, it's. I want to get Azita in here because one of the things we were looking at as we were researching this is that a significant number of the candidates in these elections they just had on Sunday actually have ongoing pending corruption cases.
Right.
And so it seems like what Pablo is telling us is that they don't feel that the politicians have their own interests at heart.
Yeah, I think something to consider is even though we have these names and labels like the Democratic Party or whatever party, just because it's named that, it doesn't mean that it is that.
It is that.
And
yeah.
I think the evolution of politics has led us to a place where the corporate line and the political line are very much blurred. So when it comes to a situation like a telephonic company that affects something that we're going to talk about later, which is a lot of things that are happening in the privatization of the internet and whatnot, but it's really interesting to see those lines being blurred.
I just want to ask Pablo, we've been getting a lot of reports that what people want is to maybe change the electoral system because they feel it favors a two-party system, and that's why people feel their voices aren't being heard or that they're misrepresented. But I want to just voice a concern that Gavilan, who we've been relying on and talking to a lot, brings up, which is that, even though you have these protests, it's not organized, and he says we have more metaphysical activities in the camps than political ones. He fears that people are forgetting the point, and he showed me this website that shows that there are clown meetings, as you can see here, that there's assembly meetings, that there's different activities, yoga, so on and so forth. So what's really happening on the ground in the camps? Do you see this?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Pablo.
Oh, yeah. We have created sort of a micro states, so to say, and we tend to be self-managed, self-efficient, and with no hierarchy. It's completely horizontal, and all these issues are taken by an assembly where everybody can participate, and those decisions are discussed and are reached by consensus. And regarding the organization, we have divided ourselves into commissions. We have, for instance, an infrastructure commission, a legal commission. We have a kindergarten for children. We have all sorts of commodities.
So now, Pablo, let me ask you a question, because it seems like there's a very idealistic strain to what you're doing there, and it's like you're creating your own mini society there. But if you could look at concrete things that you want the government to do such that you could have the more representative democracy you're looking for, what are the concrete demands?
Well, as I say, since everybody can participate, we are making really large assemblies with up to 1,000 people, with people who've never been in assemblies before, who don't know how it works. People from the right, from the left, all kinds of. It's very, very variable. So it's slow. The process is slow.
Yeah.
But we want everybody to be able to participate. So we're not in a hurry. And we are constituting this system. We are teaching everybody what it is about. We are teaching the government a lesson of democracy because they forgot what it is. And the next step is to take this into the neighborhoods because, to make it even more democratic so that there will be one of these assemblies in each neighborhood. And the decisions taken in those assemblies will be taken back to the main assembly.
Pablo, I'm going to ask Azita to jump in again here because basically what he's making a very powerful statement in the sense that they're teaching the government how democracy should work.
Right.
But how realistic is it for young people who do have great ideals? They want to see things to be different. Well, people can be in the square because 40% of them are 45% of them are unemployed.
Right.
It's not like you're missing work. How realistic is it that they're going to be able to change the system without finding ways to work within whatever existing political infrastructure there is?
I think voting by finance is a big thing. So their voting dollars, if they're not making money, they're not spending money in theory, right? And if you're not spending money, you're not regenerating the economy. And so I think to look at, if this is a real
but
statistic.
But they've got babysitters and they've got all kinds of massage parlors and everything in the campus.
I think this is the early, onset of things. So what we need to stop doing, I would hope moving forward, is looking at things just if it's not an immediate crisis that's so badly in your face that people are dying. It should be at the point, this is an early onset, I would imagine, where, of course, they're unemployed, but it's not dealing with the situation of, absolving like total poverty or anything else. We should deal with these things before it gets there.
Before it gets to that crisis moment. Ahmed has got an interesting tweet up on his screen.
This gentleman, Alex Cilio from Georgia, says politicians need to represent the people. If they don't recognize the problems facing the people, then they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pablo, to take it back to you then, do you feel if the politicians are not doing their job in Spain, are you considering or are people talking about running their own candidates, developing candidates amongst yourselves? Are you thinking about getting involved or is this movement considering getting involved in the political process?
Well, since we believe that the political party system has failed, we don't want to create another political party which will also fail. There's 2 points about this. There's no... Well, you talked about money. There's no lack of money. There's plenty of money. There's money being wasted every day. Yeah. There's just an excess of thieves. So it's not a problem of money. We have, enough. And this system, the good thing about this system is working perfectly with no conflict, where everybody is understanding, listening to each other. And it's working pretty well with 30, with 300, with 3,000, or with 30,000 people. So why not take it up to 30 million?
I want to ask you one last question before we let you go. How have the austerity measures that the Spanish government has implemented, how have they affected you and the people you know?
Well, the austerity measures have been really hard in Spain, but it's not a Spanish problem, isn't it? The system we are fighting is a globalized system, and the problem is going on everywhere in the developed countries, as they call them. So, if we're fighting against the globalized system, the only way to do it is from a globalized fight, and we are going international. We are going. It's becoming a world movement. We are already in over 600 cities all over the world. So,
Pablo, I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We're going to have to let you go, but we're going to take that point that you just made about the globalization of your struggle, and we're going to discuss it. If you have time, we'd love to bring you back during the pre-show, for the post-show. Thank you so much, Pablo. We appreciate you.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. So remember, if you want to share your stories with us, you can always tweet us at AJ Stream. We're always relying on you to keep us informed. And remember, as Pablo just mentioned, this particular movement is starting to expand beyond the borders of Spain. That's what we're going to be discussing next.
Hello, I am Nihad Awad, National Executive Director of CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. I am in the stream.
Many have begun calling it the Spanish Revolution and comparing it to the youth-driven Arab uprisings. With more than 40% of Spain's youth out of work, social media has become an instrumental tool in mobilizing the demonstrations that began in Spain on May 15th. You know, we just had commentary from Pablo that this is something that's starting to expand around the world, and that's exactly what we've been seeing. People have been tweeting us about Italian revolution, about revolution in Paris, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think you've got some interesting visuals of how this is expanding.
Right. We've spoken about the relationship between, the Arab world and how those have potentially inspired these revolutions. And we showed this image from Tahrir Square yesterday that someone sent to us, equating the January 25th movement with the Spanish Revolution. I just want to play.
And it says made in Tahrir. So
made
that's
in
Egypt.
Yeah, kind of
and
branding
they're
it.
seeing a connection with the Spanish Revolution.
Yeah, and then a quick anecdote.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, speaking to that, literally, someone just tweeted me, Easy Macintosh, and said, love what you stand for, but Spanish Revolution is hippie socializing, not legit democratic activism. Comparison to the Arab Spring is wrong.
Right. Well, I mean, whether the comparison is wrong, right here we're just going to play 30 seconds of video showing something that happened this weekend in DuPont in Washington, D.C.
I'm from Spain, and I'm here demonstrating with my countrymen and women because we're really tired of the way democracy is working in Spain. There's so much unemployment. Young people have no future. All the ones that are here either studying or working, and we would love to go home, but there's no possibility for us.
Now, you're holding, can you show me your sign?
Totally Spania.
Tell me what that means and why you're holding this sign.
So, I've been following the Arab Revolution, and I am very, very proud that finally Spain is awakening, and we're joining our brothers throughout the Mediterranean, and we're protesting as well.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to jump in because that is really fascinating. And again, she is showing, you see in her sign, it says Spanish Revolution, but it doesn't have it then again repeated in Spanish, has it repeated in Arabic.
Right.
And to the point that Azita, that person raised in their tweet, I think it's almost unfair in a way to make a direct correlation in the sense of like the Spanish effort is less than the effort in Egypt. The thing people forget is that there were people in Egypt who were struggling against the regime for decades. There's been so much that's been going on there. In Spain, it's a relatively new movement, in part because the situation that hasn't become as dire. But as Azita was pointing out, we don't always have to wait for it to get so dire before people start to speak out.
This is a preemptive thing. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, but when you see the support and you see these local movements, you're more inspired and empowered to take one upon yourself. And this is perhaps an early onset of something that might have happened a little bit later if it got too bad.
Exactly. And to give us some more insight into how this is becoming a pan-global thing, connecting the Arab Revolution as well as the Spanish Revolution, we've got joining us from Madrid, Leila Nachawati. She's a Spanish-Syrian activist, blogger, and social media manager who's camped out with the protesters and has been covering events there. Leila, thank you so much for joining us. Why are people taking to the streets in Spain, and how does it compare to what we've just seen in the Arab world?
Well, they're taken to the streets, and I always avoid making exact comparisons between the Middle East and North Africa region and Spain, because repressive regimes in Middle East and North Africa countries are really different from our context in Spain. But I think what's really global is the wider and wider gap between civil societies as a whole and their political representatives. And just after reading WikiLeaks cables, every country can, pretty much every country in the world, can realize the big gap between official discourses and real citizen demands and concerns.
To that point, Leila, I want to get Ahmed in because he's showing us some tweets that are coming in talking about things happening in different parts of the world.
Yeah, we've seen that map that shows everything's kind of spreading. But see, right here, Liberty Info is saying there's a movement since a few days in Paris where the people are taking the Bastille again. And there's apparently a big rally scheduled on the 29th of this month. And we just want to highlight, piggyback off that, the roles of technology and social media. Chaotic BR is saying that this really gives a chance for what people in Spain seem to be wanting, which is direct democracy.
So, Leila, to that point, how is social media played into the organization of these protests, and what are people trying to get out of it?
I think it's very interesting how there's not only a social and political revolution going on, but there's a media revolution that's being pushed by these events too. we can see how mainstream media in Spain has a little bit fallen behind when it comes to keeping up with what's really going on. And it's been mainly citizen media and small independent media. Like I work for a Spanish independent news site called Periodismo Humano. And you can see, I mean, there's the map with all the demonstrations spreading through the world, and there's live coverage using programs like Bamboozer. So it's mainly citizen media and small independent media covering this. So there's not so much need for intermediaries anymore, and they're mainly complementing what citizens are sharing in real time, and they're using it to organize, to call for protests through Twitter, through Facebook. It's very interesting how there's this very decentralized movement on Twitter. We don't have one tag. In most countries, there used to be one tag, maybe two, but now we have probably tens and dozens of tags. We used to, in the beginning, it was 15M, which was the day of the big demonstration. Then it turned into a camp out, so it became Acampada Sol. Then it started spreading through different cities in Spain and in other countries. So it became Acampada Valencia, Acampada Barcelona, Acampada Sevilla, Acampada Buenos Aires.
Wow.
There's
And so,
yeah.
if I can jump in there, Leila, it has been spreading to all these places. And, you know, I want to share a critical tweet that we got. It says from S. Gusa, who says, Ashong, you really need not be globetrotting, blowing embers of protests, just so you can have a story. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to bring that to you, Azita. How does the media play into this? Because we look at this stuff and we're like, we haven't asked anyone to protest in Spain. However, what happens when citizens start taking control of various media outlets using technology and start telling their own stories?
I think we're at a very exciting time in history that we can do this, that a bunch of people can be on their mobile phones, tell their stories, and those stories can be transmitted online, shared internationally with people that would never otherwise connect to them.
And to that, on that note, Leila, I want to ask you to stay with us because we want to get deeper into this during our post show. Thank you so much for joining us, Azita. It is so good to have you here as always. Folks, we're going to continue this conversation online. You can join us at stream.aljazeera.com. For more on this story, check us out, because later in the week, we're going to have an article on our website by Daniel Rivera. In the meantime, join us at stream.aljazeera.com. Tweet us at AJStream. Hi, welcome back. This is Derek Ashong. You are watching us live in the stream. We're talking about the revolutions in Spain. We want to get a little deeper into understanding what are some of the causes and how it connects to a broader global movement. Now, Ahmed, there was a particular map that you had that had all of these pinpoints around the globe. I was wondering if you could pull that up and speak to us a little bit about what it represents.
Yeah, you know, it's not entirely clear if these are actual camps or actual protest sites, but this has been, you know, circulated. They're calling it a camp map, and they're essentially trying to inspire people to take this movement from the Spanish Revolution, as you can see at the top right here, to a world revolution. And I think on the point that you and Leila were talking about, you know, about the media's role, we got a tweet as the show ended that came in that was saying, the Spanish Revolution is bigger than I thought. Thanks for being the news organization that gives a true view of what's happening. Now, I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but the reason I mention this is because, you know, Leila was talking to me earlier about how people feel as though the Spanish media has failed, right? And so that's why people are building these kinds of sites like SpanishRevolution.eu, where they're using live streaming broadcasts from the squares to really convey the information and using Twitter.
And I think this is a big deal, this idea that the media is failed. I think that to some degree, people, and especially young people around the world, are looking at their political leaders, they're looking at their corporate sectors, they're looking at their media establishments, and they're saying there's a certain collusion amongst these groups. Whether it be intentional or not, there seems to be a certain comfort that they have with maintaining the status quo. Then you have a generation that's coming in there with our own aspirations, and you want to see a better life, and you want a better world, and you're looking around there, and you don't find the opportunities, you don't find a job. Maybe you are educated, and you still can't get work. Why wouldn't people want to see things differently? I found this image. We've also gotten our Storify. This is also from Spain. It says, Democracia 1.0 obsoleta, right? That's so basically democracy 1.0 is obsolete. Democracy 2.0 is installing. It's a 5% buffering. There's
what
literally
a great
this idea.
Image of digital weaving into
exactly
the real world.
digital right into the real world, and it's but the idea of what they're conveying is really important. That they want to see a new form of democracy, and why shouldn't they?
If you segment the Arab revolutions and then these new revolutions that we're seeing, or at least these uprisings, you see that in the Arab revolutions, the fear factor was broken, everyone kept saying. And I think that's to your point of now it's not so much the fear factor. I don't think necessarily people in Spain were afraid to protest, perhaps as much as they were in the Arab, but it's inspiring to see this across the world, and to have information shared so quickly is only going to inspire you further if you have these, as Dafrik is saying, socialist, anarchist tendencies.
Well, I want to get Leila back into this. Leila, are you still with us on Skype?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, wonderful. So we've just had a tweet that Ahmed has just read, where someone says, can the Spanish demonstration be considered as the rise of social anarchists? How would you address that?
I wouldn't talk about anarchists.
Okay, you wouldn't talk about anarchists.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't talk about anarchism when it comes to this. I'd say the citizens are tired of listening to empty discourses, and our political campaign, like pre-election political campaign, has been really dirty, with the two main political parties basically throwing very dirty accusations on each other, not proposing any real steps to end unemployment, to bring solutions to our problems. So there's no honest proposals, and there's only like really getting dirty about each other. So it's basically,
that seems to be something that happens around the world, though. It's almost like the power elite, the people who are accustomed to being in leadership, get so caught up in the idea of maintaining their power, maintaining their leadership, that they don't really represent the interests of the people.
They lose sight of progress and development and keeping their people happy.
And we talked earlier today about the concept of this growing kind of space between the rich and the poor, and Huffington Post put out a list today of the top 10 countries that this is happening, which has stayed the same for the last few years. But it's interesting to note that this is an international issue, and it does go back to the global economic kind of crisis that we have dealt with in the past, and it's the same people in power. So even if you can't directly connect, and put the same kind of effort or emphasis on a Middle Eastern revolution versus, a Spanish revolution, there's a common theme that is in line with all these things.
Exactly, and I think to me the common theme is you have a generation of people who are like, you know what, we want our voices to be heard, we want to have influence, we want to see things differently, and one of the things that strikes me all the time is the open source ideas that are underpinning it. So there's two ways, there's a bunch of ways that technology plays in, but there's one that's not often discussed. People will say, well, they organize on Twitter or they use Facebook so that they can figure out where to meet. But there's a way of thinking that comes from the tech world. The idea of open source software, whereas opposed to a closed source code where the secret to how I make Windows is here for me, my company alone. You've got this open idea where basically a bunch of people contribute towards building that source code.
Which becomes exponential. So when you open up the idea flow and you open up the kind of hotbed, it becomes a petri dish of opportunity.
On the flip side, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer or devil's advocate necessarily, but you think about older generations of people who look at what's happening sometimes and they question whether this is idealistic too much. We have this tweet coming from Turner Rachel equating what you're saying is this open source, crowdsourced kind of revolution. He's saying the revolution represents where globalization is headed. Global media represents the people. It's our new democracy. So he's equating global media and citizen journalism, which is I think what Leila was talking about, with democracy, which is what these people seem to be claiming to want.
Democracy can't operate without an informed citizenry and without an independent media. I mean, any country where you look, where the media is state-controlled and it is not independent and free, you do not find a viable democracy.
Right.
They just have to go hand in hand. And part of what we're realizing is that the media, even in states that are so-called free, places like Spain, places like even here in the United States, where it's supposedly free, you find people feeling they're somehow dissatisfied.
Wow.
They want something more. And what's happening is, historically, maybe my voice or your voice couldn't rise up unless we were part of the establishment.
Right.
Whereas now, everyone seems to be able to have a voice.
It doesn't matter.
But I think they can have a voice if the internet allows them to have a voice, which brings us the issue of the ability to have the internet, which is ultimately the megaphone that allows for these messages to happen.
So that is a great point, and I want to bring both of our Skype guests back for that question in particular. Pablo and Leila, thank you so much for coming back. I want to ask you, and I'm going to start with you, Leila, and Pablo, I'd like to get your comments on this as well, about the SIND law in Spain, the law that is in, what some people have called it a form of internet censorship. Could you explain to us what that law does and why it's caused so much controversy?
Sure. Yeah, I actually wrote a piece on this for Al Jazeera, and we were wondering if there's a connection between the online campaign against the SIND law and mobilizations taking place now. So basically, Spanish internet users have been fiercely opposing SIND law for a year. So this is probably creating ground for further mobilizations and further organizing of opposition to the main political parties. So SIND law is a part of the sustainable economy bill that allows the government, allows political representatives to decide what contents and what sites should be blocked.
That's
on the ground
very
of,
interesting.
This is going to take effect in the summer, and so it's a big blow on net neutrality this summer.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And Pablo, it seems like, because the SIND law has been discussed, people have been arguing about this for over a year. Pablo, I'm wondering if you can give us some insight into what's the background? Like, this movement didn't just pop up all of a sudden. What are some of the things that are fueling it that have been happening for a while?
About the SIND law, you mean?
No, including the SIND law, I think, is an example, but just the factors that are fueling the frustration among the young people there, whether it's SIND law or others.
Well, it's there's many bad situations here. There's a lot of unemployment. There's many difficulties to get a house. There's many problems with youth. It's a complex thing, and it all comes from that excess of power of the financial world, the banking world, that are taking all the resources away. So, but the politicians are allied with them, and they are allowing that to happen.
Leila, is it okay if I just kind of throw this question to you? It's a comment on your actual article on our website. Bert is saying, Spain is a perfect example of a socialist regime that has run out of money, and Spanish protesters are perfect examples of a people who refuse to understand that socialist governments eventually run out of other people's money to spend. Do you agree with that? To this commentator?
Can you repeat the source?
Just basically,
quote?
The source is Bert. He's commenting on your article on Al Jazeera. Saying that the
nice comment. Well, a lot of the Spanish mobilizations a lot of the Spanish protesters are referring to Iceland as an example. I don't know how familiar the audience is with what happened in Iceland, but it basically created a referendum so that people could choose whether banks should be rescued by public money, by the government. So it's these kind of things that are being raised. These kind of questions, these kind of issues are being discussed. It's pretty specific stuff. We know, that there's an economical global crisis, but I don't think that everything's okay and everything justified. And leaving very, very, very vulnerable people in an even more vulnerable situation is not going to solve the country's situation.
Can I ask you a quick question into that point, Leila? Were the banks in Spain, did they also have to be rescued?
Some of them.
Okay, so because the reason I ask that is because we're basically seeing a lot of people affected by this global crisis. We brought it up last week. The crisis happened in 2008, 2009. A lot of folks were saved, but the people didn't seem to get the bailout that they wanted. Let's take this one last point coming in from online. At Iron Chariot says, one man, one vote is obsolete. Distributed networks strive towards the ideal of one man, one voice, a far more powerful idea. I think that voice is what is most important, because in those bailouts, the voices of the people were not heard. The people are now making their voices heard, whether people want to listen or not. Pablo, Leila, I want to thank you both for joining us. Azita, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here as well. Ahmed, doing great as always. And I'm Derek. It's been a blast. Thank you so much for joining us here in the stream. We're going to be back at the same time tomorrow. Remember, you can go to the Al Jazeera website in the next couple of days to see a story that we'll be doing about this issue. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.